Most people spend their lives believing the strongest person in the room is the one who speaks first. History suggests the opposite. The people who changed kingdoms, redirected markets, and reshaped entire generations were often the quietest faces at the table. They understood something most people never notice. Power rarely announces itself. It arranges the conditions around you until your own choices begin serving someone else's interests. That is why manipulation is rarely loud. It feels like agreement. Influence rarely looks like pressure. It feels like freedom. And the most dangerous mistake you can make is believing you are immune simply because you have good intentions. Good intentions never stopped anyone from making poor decisions. They only make those decisions feel morally comfortable. Machiavelli observed political courts. Today, the setting has changed. The human mind has not. Offices replaced palaces. Social media replaced royal gossip. Boardrooms replaced council chambers. Yet the same invisible forces still shape reputation, trust, ambition, fear, and authority. Every day, people surrender influence without realizing it. Not because someone forced them, because someone understood attention, timing, perception, and emotion better than they did. This video is not about becoming cynical. It is about becoming difficult to mislead, because the moment you recognize how influence really works, you stop confusing confidence with competence, popularity with respect, and noise with strength. And once that illusion breaks, you begin seeing every conversation through an entirely different lens. Number 1. The invisible battlefield. Most people prepare for arguments. Almost nobody prepares for perception. Yet perception decides outcomes long before evidence enters the conversation. A proposal can be ignored because of who presents it. An idea can sound brilliant after being repeated by someone with greater status. A calm voice can outweigh stronger facts simply because confidence is easier to notice than accuracy. Machiavelli understood that human beings rarely judge reality directly. They judge signals. Clothing becomes competence. Certainty becomes expertise. Familiarity becomes trust. These shortcuts help the brain conserve energy, but they also create blind spots. Modern workplaces reveal this every day. 2 employees offer nearly identical solutions. One is remembered as decisive. The other is described as difficult. The difference often has less to do with intelligence than with the frame surrounding each person. This is why awareness matters more than outrage. Outrage reacts after the perception has already formed. Awareness notices the frame before it hardens into belief. The question is never whether perception exists. The question is whether you notice it while it is still taking shape. Once you begin watching how impressions are created instead of simply accepting them, you stop participating unconsciously in games you never agreed to play. And that realization leads to a deeper question. If perception shapes decisions, what truly drives perception itself? Number 2. Why the mind prefers comfortable stories. Facts rarely change people as quickly as narratives do. Human beings naturally organize experience into stories because stories reduce uncertainty. The brain would rather accept a simple explanation than tolerate an unanswered question. That tendency creates remarkable progress in learning, but it also creates remarkable vulnerability. Once a convincing narrative forms, contradictory evidence often feels like an attack rather than new information. History offers countless examples. Financial bubbles grow because optimism becomes a shared story. Political movements expand because identity becomes part of the narrative. Online outrage spreads because certainty travels faster than nuance. Machiavelli recognized this pattern centuries before neuroscience gave it a name. People defend stories that protect their sense of order. They are not always defending truth. They are defending psychological comfort. This is why calm observation becomes a strategic advantage. Instead of asking whether a claim sounds convincing, ask why it feels convincing. Instead of asking who speaks with confidence, ask who benefits if that confidence is believed. These questions slow automatic judgment. They replace impulse with investigation. Over time, this habit becomes a form of quiet independence. You become less likely to follow crowds driven by emotion and more likely to recognize when certainty is being manufactured. The greatest shift is subtle. You stop asking what everyone believes. You begin asking why everyone believes it. And once that habit develops, another pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The people who appear most certain are not always the people who understand the situation best. Number 3. The cost of immediate reaction. Modern life rewards speed. Notifications demand instant replies. News cycles reward the first opinion. Social media celebrates the fastest response, not the most accurate one. The result is a culture that mistakes immediacy for intelligence. Machiavelli observed a different reality. Decisions made under emotional pressure often serve the moment instead of the objective. The person who reacts first usually reveals more than intended. Tone exposes frustration. Urgency exposes priorities. Defensiveness exposes insecurity. Meanwhile, the person who pauses gains something far more valuable than time. They gain information. In negotiations, the first silence often produces more insight than the first argument. In leadership, a measured response can calm an entire organization while impulsive certainty spreads unnecessary fear. During moments of crisis, people naturally search for someone who appears emotionally stable. Stability creates confidence because it suggests the situation is being understood rather than merely experienced. This does not mean becoming emotionally distant. It means refusing to let emotion become the architect of every decision. A thoughtful pause allows facts to separate from assumptions. It allows patterns to emerge before conclusions harden. Many of history's greatest strategic failures were not caused by a lack of intelligence. They were caused by impatience disguised as confidence. The strongest position is rarely created by moving first. More often, it is created by knowing exactly why you are moving at all. And once you learn to slow your reactions, you begin noticing another force that shapes almost every human decision without announcing itself. Number 4. Reputation is built in small moments. Most people imagine reputation as something created by major achievements. In reality, it grows through ordinary moments repeated consistently over time. Every conversation, every promise kept, every calm decision during uncertainty quietly contributes to an invisible ledger inside other people's minds. Machiavelli understood that authority depends not only on ability, but also on expectation. When people consistently associate someone with composure, discipline, and reliability, they begin anticipating those qualities before any action takes place. That expectation changes interactions. Leaders are trusted before they speak. Experts are heard before they explain. Teams cooperate more easily because confidence already exists. The opposite is equally true. A pattern of emotional inconsistency slowly erodes credibility, even when technical ability remains unchanged. Consider the difference between two executives facing the same setback. One immediately searches for someone to blame. The other calmly identifies the problem, gathers information, and communicates a clear direction. Both possess knowledge. Only one strengthens long-term trust. Reputation is less about perfection than predictability of character. People forgive mistakes more readily than they forgive instability. This is why discipline often appears invisible until pressure arrives. Stress reveals whether principles were genuine or merely convenient. Every challenge becomes a public demonstration of private habits. Long before others evaluate your success, they evaluate your consistency. And consistency creates something even more valuable than admiration. It creates credibility. Yet credibility alone does not explain why some individuals remain influential across changing circumstances while others quickly lose relevance. Number 5. The quiet strength of adaptability. Nature offers a lesson that history repeats endlessly. The strongest tree is not always the one that survives the storm. Often, it is the one flexible enough to bend without breaking. Human judgment follows a similar principle. Many people confuse stubbornness with conviction because both appear firm from a distance. Machiavelli recognized an important distinction. Principles should remain stable. Methods should remain adaptable. Leaders who refuse to adjust to changing realities eventually become prisoners of their own certainty. Businesses that ignore technological change disappear despite decades of success. Political movements collapse when they mistake yesterday's solutions for tomorrow's answers. Even personal relationships suffer when people insist on defending outdated versions of themselves instead of growing with new circumstances. Adaptability is not weakness. It is evidence that reality matters more than ego. The strongest thinkers constantly revise conclusions when better evidence appears. They do not abandon their values. They refine their understanding. This requires humility, because admitting incomplete knowledge challenges the identity many people work hard to protect. Yet history repeatedly rewards those willing to learn faster than conditions change. Quiet adaptability creates resilience. It allows setbacks to become information instead of permanent defeat. Over time, flexible minds accumulate wisdom while rigid minds accumulate frustration. The paradox is striking. The people most capable of changing course are often the ones least likely to lose themselves. They understand that identity is anchored in values, not habits. And once that distinction becomes clear, an even deeper question begins to emerge. If influence, reputation, patience, and adaptability all shape power, what ultimately makes a person truly difficult to shake? Number 6, the discipline of knowing yourself. Every empire that collapsed followed the same invisible pattern. It failed internally before it failed externally. Machiavelli saw this in rulers who lost direction long before they lost their kingdoms. The greatest threat was rarely an enemy outside the walls. It was confusion inside the mind. Modern life creates the same danger. Algorithms compete for attention. Headlines compete for outrage. Opinions compete for identity. The more voices surround you, the easier it becomes to mistake borrowed certainty for personal conviction. Self-knowledge is not a luxury. It is strategic stability. When your principles are defined privately instead of borrowed publicly, external pressure loses much of its force. Criticism becomes information instead of identity. Praise becomes encouragement instead of addiction. You stop adjusting your character to match every audience because your direction already exists before the conversation begins. This creates a quiet confidence that cannot be manufactured. People sense it without fully understanding why. It is not arrogance. It is alignment. Decisions become simpler because they no longer require constant approval. Boundaries become easier because they are built on values instead of emotion. History repeatedly shows that individuals who understand themselves rarely need to convince everyone else. They spend less energy defending who they are and more energy becoming who they choose to be. That is why genuine authority begins long before anyone else recognizes it. It begins in private moments where no applause exists. And once your center becomes stable, the world around you starts looking very different. Number 7, freedom belongs to the unmoved. Many people believe freedom means having unlimited choices. Machiavelli would likely challenge that assumption. The deepest form of freedom is remaining capable of choosing wisely even under pressure. A person controlled by anger is not free. A person controlled by fear is not free. A person controlled by approval is not free. Real influence begins where emotional dependence ends. Throughout history, remarkable leaders shared one uncommon quality. They refused to let temporary emotions become permanent directions. They listened carefully. They adjusted patiently. They acted deliberately. This quiet discipline often appeared unimpressive in the moment, yet extraordinary over decades. Modern society rewards visibility. History rewards endurance. Those are rarely the same thing. Enduring influence belongs to people who understand that attention fades, trends disappear, and public opinion changes with remarkable speed. Character develops more slowly. Judgment matures more quietly. Wisdom rarely competes for the spotlight because it has no reason to. The individual who cannot be rushed into panic, flattered into arrogance, or discouraged into surrender becomes remarkably difficult to destabilize. Not because life becomes easier, but because their foundation no longer depends on circumstances. That is the lesson hidden beneath centuries of political philosophy. The greatest victory is not defeating an opponent. It is refusing to surrender command of your own mind. Every decision either strengthens that command or quietly weakens it. The question is not whether the world will test your judgment. It always will. The real question is this: when every familiar certainty disappears, what part of you still remains unchanged? Power rarely begins with controlling events. It begins with understanding yourself well enough that events cannot easily control you. Machiavelli never asked people to worship power. He asked them to understand it, because what remains invisible eventually becomes decisive. The more clearly you see the forces shaping perception, reputation, fear, ambition, and choice, the less likely you are to become their unconscious servant. Calm judgment outlasts excitement. Character outlasts popularity. Quiet discipline outlasts noise. History remembers those who learned this before everyone else did. Perhaps the most important question is not how much influence you possess today. Perhaps it is whether your mind still belongs entirely to you. Number 8. Why wisdom sounds less certain. The loudest voices often create the strongest first impression. History, however, rewards something different. It rewards judgment. The more deeply people understand a subject, the more clearly they recognize its complexity. Certainty begins to soften. Questions become sharper. Conclusions become more precise. Machiavelli spent his life observing rulers, generals, merchants, and diplomats. One lesson appears again and again throughout history. Overconfidence blinds long before ignorance does. Leaders who believe they have already mastered reality stop noticing change. They confuse past success with permanent truth. Entire companies have disappeared because executives defended yesterday's strategy while tomorrow quietly arrived. The same pattern appears in everyday life. A confident prediction spreads across social media in minutes. A thoughtful analysis receives little attention because it admits uncertainty where certainty cannot honestly exist. Yet when events unfold, the careful observer is often closer to reality than the loudest expert. Wisdom is not hesitation. It is disciplined humility. It leaves room for new evidence without abandoning principles. This mindset creates resilience because it welcomes correction before failure forces it. The strongest thinkers are not those who never change their minds. They are the ones who know exactly why they change them. That quiet flexibility becomes difficult to imitate because it grows from understanding rather than performance. The paradox is remarkable. The people who know the most often sound the least interested in proving they know everything. Perhaps certainty impresses an audience, but wisdom prepares a future. Number 9. The architecture of trust. Every civilization has been built on an invisible currency more valuable than gold: trust. Markets cannot function without it. Governments struggle when it disappears. Families fracture when promises lose meaning. Machiavelli understood that authority depends not only on strength but on reliability. People willingly follow leaders whose actions remain consistent with their stated principles. They become cautious around those whose words constantly outrun their behavior. Trust is not created by dramatic speeches. It grows through repeated demonstrations of integrity under pressure. A leader who accepts responsibility during failure strengthens confidence more than one who celebrates success after victory. A business that admits mistakes often earns greater loyalty than one that hides them. Individuals who honor small commitments quietly build reputations capable of carrying far greater responsibilities. Trust also possesses an unusual characteristic. It accumulates slowly but disappears quickly. Years of credibility can be damaged by a single act of dishonesty. That is why judgment matters more than image. Image can be manufactured. Character eventually reveals itself. Modern technology has made appearances easier to control than ever before, yet genuine credibility remains impossible to automate. People eventually notice the difference between performance and authenticity. History repeatedly confirms that enduring influence belongs not to those who appear flawless, but to those whose principles remain dependable when circumstances become difficult. Reputation begins with perception. Lasting trust begins with consistency. And consistency transforms influence into something far more powerful than popularity. It transforms it into confidence that survives uncertainty. Number 10. The long game of power. Most people measure success by immediate results. History measures something else entirely: endurance. The names remembered centuries later are rarely those who won every argument or dominated every rival. They are the individuals who shaped institutions, ideas, and generations through patient vision. Machiavelli understood that power without direction eventually consumes itself. Lasting influence requires more than intelligence. It requires perspective broad enough to sacrifice temporary satisfaction for permanent progress. Modern society encourages the opposite. Every notification demands attention. Every contra promises urgency. Every controversy insists on immediate participation. Yet the strongest minds develop a different habit. They ask whether today's emotion will still matter 5 years from now. Most will not. This simple question changes decisions. It separates impulse from significance. Leaders who think in decades make different choices than those trapped inside the next headline. Investors who think beyond quarterly fluctuations often outperform those chasing constant excitement. Individuals who invest patiently in knowledge, discipline, relationships, and character gradually accumulate advantages invisible to those searching for instant rewards. The long game is rarely dramatic. It is composed of ordinary decisions repeated with extraordinary consistency. Quiet learning instead of constant comparison. Deliberate action instead of emotional reaction. Private discipline instead of public performance. Over time, these choices reshape identity itself. They create a life guided less by circumstance and more by intention. Perhaps this is the deepest lesson hidden beneath centuries of political philosophy. The greatest victory is not over another person. It is over the impulse to surrender your judgment to fear, pride, or urgency. Because when the noise finally fades, only one question remains. Did you spend your life chasing influence over the world? Or did you first earn mastery over yourself?